It's the bird!
Yeah!
There it is! All right.
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Patrick Belding. I'm on Team Sad Dog Discs, and I'd like to welcome you guys to the workshop series that I'm putting on here. This workshop series is just designed to share knowledge within the disc golf community, everything I've learned in the past 2 years to share with everybody, new and old, beginner or veteran, and to collaborate ideas together. This will be a four-part workshop series. This one is putting, the second one will be upshots, the third will be forehands, and the last one will be, of course, distance drives. I'd like to thank Sad Dog Discs for helping me put on these events. They will be vending at each one of them. And I'd like to thank Micah Miller for the videography and putting together the YouTube video. For each workshop series, I'm going to be featuring a Team Sad Dog Disc player to help me and collaborate with on each of these workshop series. For this first one, I'd like to welcome Pauli on Team Sad Dog. He's going to be helping me with putting, so I hope you guys enjoy. Golf. I just want to throw that out there. I'll try my best to help you with what I can, but always take what I say with a grain of salt and try it on your own and continue to find different ways to learn and progress about the game. All right. I'd like to thank Mr. Sad Dog, Jay Graham, for setting up here. He's my sponsor here. So I want to thank him for supporting me and helping, give him a little clap for setting up. And then for this clinic, I have a Team Sad Dog member, my good friend Pauli. He is also a tournament player, goes around to 15, 20 a year, very good player and a very great putter. So I invited him out to help. And he putts a little bit differently than I do, so you'll get some different ideas about what you might try in your putting. So to start off, let's just jump right into it. The first thing is I'm going to start with the basics here. And to start off, what putter should you use? The good thing about putting is there really is no right way to do it per se. It's whatever is comfortable to you and to your body. There's plenty of different putters to choose from, whether it's understable or overstable, some that fall out of the sky and some that like to glide. For example, I use the MVP Atom here, and so does Pauli.
So does Jack Perkins over there.
So does Jack Perkins. This is what I would call an understable putter. It gives us a little bit more glide, so we don't have to work as hard to get it to go a little bit farther. There are thousands of putters almost to choose from, and I could talk to each of you guys about that putting choice if you had any questions. Pauli, did you have any comments on that one?
There's also, how shallow or how deep a putter is. You can see this Atom here is really shallow, which is why I like it. I saw you had the Berg in your hand earlier, and that one's a lot deeper.
Yeah, they're all different fields.
Yeah.
I have three different fields.
Neither is right, neither is wrong. It's all about what feels comfortable to you, but what I recommend is, you figure out what putter feels best in your hand, and generally speaking, that's the right one. And the best way to do that is just to go to, you can go over to the tent over there after we're done, and just feel a bunch of putters. Just hold them in your hand how you would hold a putter, and whatever feels right, try that one out. And then, when you find the one that works for you, it's good to practice with multiple, So I think I probably have 8 of these. I know you have at least 10 of yours.
Yeah. So there's also a mental side of putting. We're going to talk about that near the end of the session here. There's a lot to talk about that. But I wanted to start off with just some simple techniques that you can try at home with just putting and the basics, okay? So I'm not going to do too much putting per se here, but I wanted to go over some different things. If you haven't tried, there's 2 different stances that you can go for. There's what we call the stagger putt, which is if your right hand, you're going to put your right foot forward and your left foot back, and you want to keep your center of gravity, your hips, in between your 2 feet to where you're well maintained and well balanced, okay? You can get fancy and try and put your weight forward or back, but that would be a little bit more advanced, okay? And what you would do in this stance more times than not is that you're going to put your weight on your back leg and then push off of that back leg into your target. There's also what we call the straddle, which your feet are basically shoulder width apart, And if I'm facing my target, my center is at the base here of the basket. And then what I do is I bring the weight down into my core and I use both of my legs to push the disc and give it velocity into the basket. So those are going to be your two starting points when you're putting into the basket. Okay? Now for grip, what I've learned and what I've seen most players do is most people will put their finger along the outside edge of the rim here. Some people will put it on the side, but for the most part there's a little indent after the edge that comes back down, and I'll see most people put their finger here. And for me personally, I like to use more of what we call fan grip, where all my fingers are spread out. Pauli, would you like to show what you got here?
Yeah, so I do something pretty similar. I kind of tend to have mine more on top than in the indent, but you know, again, neither is wrong. And then I tend to have my fingers a little bit closer together. Again, kind of going back to the comfort thing, that's the most important thing. Whatever feels best in your hand is, generally speaking, what's going to be best. But I think having a finger kind of along the rim is a really important feature because it helps you be able to control the putt. Some people, like, especially when they're beginning, they'll kind of treat their putt more like a soft throw and they'll grip it like they would a normal throw. What you lose a lot with that is your accuracy. You know, you have a lot less control over this, but if you have the finger here, it's much more of a finesse move than a power shot.
Okay, now that we've gone over grip and how to stand, let's talk about the two different ways that you can actually get the disc in the basket. There's what we call push putting and spin putting. And then there's a third one that's a hybrid of the two, and we call that sploosh putting, like a spin and a push put together. And that's a lot of what I use, is a little bit of a combination of both, okay? Now ultimately what a push putt is going to do is I'm going to take the disc and I'm not going to pop my wrist or have much wrist action, and what I'm trying to do is use my weight and push the disc into the basket like the name is called. So they'll use that push putt and they'll push the disc into the basket. What that allows you to do is have a more constant release because you're not using this lever. All right, now let's go the other way. If you want to do what we call a spin putting, that's going to be happening from your wrist action. Now for this putting, you don't have to use much lower body. The best guys in the world, they barely use their legs at all, and they do it all within their arm and wrist. And what that allows them to do is get a little bit more speed into their putt and allows them to drive it into the basket more than a push putt. Okay? So it still allows them to move forward and to spin at it, but I don't have to push anything towards the target. All right? And then what I like to do is a combination of both, not really a spin, not really a push, but a sploosh putt. And what that allows me to do is use my lower body still and have that push motion, but to allow my body to have a little bit more of a pop, give it a little bit more velocity, and give me a little bit more energy to get into the basket. All right, so that's why I enjoy the sploosh putt. Pauli, which one do you prefer?
I'm much more of a push putter than anything. A lot of where I generate the power from my putt is kind of how far I bring my arm down. It kind of creates like a little bit of a pendulum motion kind of down here past my waist. But you'll see a lot of players, you know, even who do push putts, will only come down to their waist. And then you come up and then, yeah, just following straight through, trying to kind of keep your arm in line with the target. I think the most common myth people have is whatever your dominant arm is, whether you're if you're a right-handed player, is people will commonly pull it to the right. And I think that's because a lot of times what happens is you come down straight like this, but people, when they come up, they come out wide like this, and they'll pull it out. Just kind of remember that your shoulders, if you're squared up with the basket, are about the width of the chains. You know, if I were to walk in a straight line right now towards the basket, like stick my arms out like this, pretty much exactly the width of the chains. So if you keep your arm within that, you're not going to pull it to the right as often.
Yep, and that leads me to one of the last things about what I would say is the basics. Is probably the most complicated one of the basics is where do you end your momentum after you've done your putt and your body. And this is something I think every player in the world works on, is is how do I finish and where should I end up? Where should my energy be released? And me and Pauli both agree, and a lot of people agree, that your hand should be ending towards your target. Wherever you're ending, you want your hand to end there. And what that allows your body and your disc to do is to move towards that target. Because if I end with my arm, let's say over to the right here, that pulls the disc over to the right. If I can keep that target right at the basket, it's gonna give it its trajectory towards it, which is something I think the most advanced players to the lowest players can continue to work on is that last release into the basket.
Yeah.
Okay?
You see it a lot of basketball too. When someone goes for a shot, they leave their hand up. You know, it's the follow through. It's an important last step of it. You know, a lot of times if you find yourself leaving it short, you might notice that you'll come up, you'll do your putt, and then the hand goes right back down. You know, sometimes it can help, especially if you're not very good at leaving the hand up, exaggerate the motion when you're practicing.
What are you aiming for specifically?
Generally speaking, when I'm lining up a putt, I'm picking a single link of the chains, and I'm just keeping my eyes focused on that, trying not to move my eyes off of that target the entire time.
But you see a lot of them putt, and they're pulling it. I mean, it's going off from right to left, and it's breaking into the basket.
Mm-hmm.
So where would you aim for that?
All right.
Right of the chains?
So something in putting and in disc golf that you can't replace is just repetitions. Kind of like bowling, you can talk about all the fancy stuff, but eventually you just got to keep going and practicing and practicing. And when I started off, I started no further than about 15 feet, and I would pick the dead center, and I would just aim at it and aim at it, and then I made my motion work into that. Then when I started to take some steps back, I noticed what you said. When I aimed, my disc would go to the left before it got to the basket. So what I would do then is I would adjust my chain link maybe one to the right. And what that allowed me to do is aim, my follow through would be a little bit more to the right, and then it would fade to the center. But that is something that comes with multiple practice repetitions.
What if you're throwing, many throw kind of a hyzer putt?
Sure. Where do you aim at?
Same thing?
Same thing.
Same
So even if I turn my disc to what we would call a hyzer, I can still push it straight off of my body without it wanting to go to the left. And that depends on the putters what do which motion, okay? But I can, if I stand back farther, I can try and use that hyzer putt to maybe go around a tree and go to that left side.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's all about that repetition.
If you're someone who's fully planning on, like, you're kind of talking like your Greg Barsby's or Garrett Gerthies, these guys who they put it on such angle, they'll kind of put it out wide and have it come back in. If that's the kind of putt you want to go for, you might want to aim slightly right of center, but I still recommend, even if you're putting off wide and having it come back in, I would not advise having your aim point not be a part of the basket,
And that's something we can work on after we get done talking, is where are we aiming. I know it's a lot of talking right now. We're going to break off after that and work. For me, I'm a flat putter, so I try and just to get mine to go dead straight, just personally. So that's what I work on when I'm doing my putting practice. But I know a lot of people do a hyzer putt into it, okay? All right, let's go, let's move into circle 2 here real quick. I just want to run through this real quick just so you guys can see what's possible in disc golf. So once you get outside what we call 33 feet, which is about 11 steps for the average person, you don't have to keep your feet planted anymore. You can move your momentum forward and move in front of your line. 3 different options that most people will use. You got a step putt, a step through putt, and then a jump putt. All right? Now the step putt is I'm going to load my weight onto my front foot, and then I'm going to push off of that front foot into the basket. So if I go in slow motion, I'm going to put all my weight here and then jump towards the basket. I'm going to push or step into it. And what that does is it allows me to get a little bit more energy towards the basket. All right, you do the step through.
Generally, I'll do a step through. So basically for me, I'm doing the same general motion that I would for a normal putt inside the circle, but I follow through with it. So Pat is kind of like loading his energy up and then coming through. Almost absolutely aided on that route. But I tend to, just do basically what is a normal putt, but instead of stopping myself here, I'm allowing myself to come through, which is helping push the disc further than I would be able to stopping myself on this leg.
And what I love about the step through is it lets you keep your normal motion. You just continue your momentum forward.
You just learn one putt.
You learn one putt, and then you just adjust it by allowing momentum to carry you forward a little bit more. Let me demonstrate here. So my normal putt, I come here, I go down, I lock, and I go up. Well, at the step putt, I can do the same, or step through, I can do the same thing. I load up, and then I come here, and then I just follow through. So I don't have to change anything else up top, it's just in my lower body. Now the last one is a little bit, I would say, more flashy of a circle two. It's what we call the jump putt. And like the straddle putt, you're gonna load up, and then you're gonna push off of both feet and jump towards the basket. Now personally, I use this one only at long circle two looks, like outside 70 feet when I need a lot of force. Or if I'm on a hill like this, and I'm like, say, outside circle two, and now I'm in line with the hill. So I'm stable, and I can go at the basket. If I'm like this, if I'm staggered, all my weight's way back here, and now I have to work really hard to get up. So the straddle allows me to go straight up at the basket. And I can demonstrate that here. In the wet, I would avoid the jump putt, but I'm crazy. I love the jump putt. But again, it's just a straddle, load up your weight, and then you jump forward at the basket.
Nice.
Okay? So if you wanted to try those out, you could. Those are your 3 circle 2 putts. Now the last thing, I promise, and then we're going to do some putting here.
Pat, I have a question, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, say you're in a position where your lie doesn't allow you to jump or step through. How are you changing, say you're at 60 feet, how are you changing your normal putt to adjust for that extra distance?
Oh boy. Alrighty, so he's asking if you're far distance and you can't do a motion forward putt. I think that comes down to your practice putting routine. Because I'll practice to about here without doing any sort of adjustment. And I'm learning that I need to aim a little bit more to the right now to get it to fade in. So if I'm, say, like way back here outside of practice range, I'm more or less doing this on the fly, just trying to guesstimate where it is, and more or less just trying to get it as close as possible, maybe not even make it. So that's what I'm doing. Pauli, do you have anything that you do there?
No, it's pretty similar for me. I'd say if I have the ceiling for it, I tend to aim higher just to kind of give my putt more time to hang in the air before it comes back in. Because I think Pat and I are the same way as a lot of people. there are a couple of pros out there who, like, even when they're middle of circle 2, they're not jumping because they just generate so much momentum it doesn't make sense for them. But I think most of us, like, the second we're outside of the circle, I go, yay, I can jump putt, or yay, I can step putt. So once I'm in a position like this, yeah, generally, if I can't step forward, I can't jump forward, then I go through my same routine. I just aim higher and a little bit more to the right and kind of hope it hyzers back in. But once you're in a position like that, your percentages of being able to make it are going to go down naturally because you can't do the thing that you normally do to generate power.
We'll call it a casual round shot, so there's just no pressure, just but you don't want to
Yeah.
eat it. So.
Right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I appreciate you answering that.
Sure. Any more questions so far? All right. So the last thing I want to talk about is if you decide to play in like a weekly or you decide to play with friends and you feel a little bit nervous or at a tournament, what do you think about? Nobody, I think, really tackles the mental side of putting because I promise you're going to practice putting and you're going to hit, 8 out of 10 from 25 feet. Then you're going to get to your tournament and you're going to feel those nerves come up and you're going to throw it at the ground like I did at Northwoods Black on hole 16. There's no recent memory there. So what do you think about? What I've learned in my tournament playing is it's best to think about one thing, if you can. Just try and focus on one thing that is not your form. You don't want to think about what your body's doing, because then you're so fixated on it, you're probably going to start doing weird things with your body. So I've had some different things, whether it's one chain, I'm like dead focused on one chain, whether it's something positive like you're going to hit this putt, whether it's a motivator like make sure you give it a lot of energy or make sure you give it a lot of effort. Those are some of the mental like tricks that you can try and use to almost forget what you're doing. Because at that point, your practice routine and your muscle memory hopefully takes over your body, and you've got to keep your mind away from affecting what your body is trying to do. Because your body knows what to do, but if you're nervous and you come up slow, you're gonna mess it up. So you gotta deflect your brain from that reality. And I think that's something a lot of people don't talk about. It's tough to do. It's tough to do because you want to make every putt that you come up to. Do you have any tricks that you do?
So I think one of the keys to helping avoid issues when you deal with that is to have a consistent pre-putt routine. Everyone should have something. Doesn't matter necessarily what it is. For me, mine's a little bit longer. Most people probably don't do one that is this involved, but it's just I found over the, I don't even want to think about how many years I've been playing this game, like the one that works for me the most. So what I like to do, I step up to my lie, and I just kind of like don't look at the basket, and most of my friends here will attest, I usually close my eyes for a second, because I know in my body what a perfect putt feels like. I know exactly what that should, because at this point, you know, all these years I've been playing, I've made, you know, tens of thousands of putts. My body knows what to do. So I'll close my eyes, I'll do 2 quick little pumps, and then right here, I open my eyes, and I can see, okay, I'm aiming way off to the left right now. So then I make the adjustment. I come through and I do 1 or 2 of these along the pole, and then I go and deliver the putt. So it doesn't have to be that many steps. You know, for some people, it's just kind of like step up, 1, 2, and then go. For some, you know, some pros, they like to just like step up and just do it, but I recommend having some sort of routine. But I like what Pat's talking about of don't think about, you know, okay, I need to engage my legs in this, I need to make sure my hand is following through here. That's just your anxiety, you know, kicking into overdrive. And you'll experience that anxiety like even in a casual round with your friends, you know? Because I think part of the thing is when you're practice putting, you've got 5 or 10 putters in your hand. You know, you miss one, it's no big deal. You're about to throw your other one in 2 seconds. But in a round of disc golf, you know, that first putt you take is the putt that counts. And a lot of times if you're playing a round like that, it could be 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes between putts. You know, you could be parking a bunch of holes and not even really having to think about putts, or you could be having a really tough round and you're just laying up for all of your pars. And so, you know, it's been 30 minutes, all of a sudden you have another 25-footer. That's totally different than your practice routine. Than when you're practice putting, when you've been making them every couple of seconds. So having a consistent routine, and like Pat's saying, think about a positive thought. Something like that. Sometimes, honestly, if I'm having a really rough putting day, I will straight up think about something else entirely. I've had tournaments where I'm like lining up a putt, I've been putting terribly all day, and I'm just like, man, my hammock sounds pretty good right about now, and then I go for it. Sometimes that happens. So, lots of different ways, but yeah. What's up?
So, on that mental routine, do you guys, when you practice putt in your backyard or wherever you practice putting, do you practice those routines? Do you practice like kind of the tournament setting putt at all? Or are you just trying to get your form down when you practice putting?
Okay, let's talk about that. Takes us into our last thing, and that is the different routines that I use to practice putt. So yes, in the short answer, I do that sometimes, but I change up my putting practice completely. I go into more of a stressful environment where I take 3 discs, I call it the 3 disc challenge, and to take a step back, I have to make all 3 of my putts to take a step backwards. 2 putts keeps me the same. I don't move back or forward. If I only make 1 or less, I've now got to go closer to the basket. And then what that allows me to do is go through all of my routine. I only have 3 putters, so I don't need to putt 20 times now. And now I have a goal. I want to step backwards. So now I got a little pressure, and I promise once you make 1 and then you miss that second one, you're going to feel a little bit more of like a oh, okay, I've got to make this putt. And that allows me then to practice that, okay, let's try and block that out and think about the one thing that you're focusing on. So I do practice that at times. I wouldn't do that a lot. That's a very stressful kind of putting practice. But that's how I practice right before a big event, especially like when there's a lot of people around. That's what I go through. Something else, I try to make putting fun. That's one thing I think is important, is to keep it fun. And Pauli has a great putting routine that he uses.
So, I, generally speaking, when I'm doing my putting practice at my house, first thing I'll do is I will just take a stack of all my putters and rattle off a bunch just to get warmed up and just to kind of remember the repetition of it. But then I create games for myself because, like Pat's saying, it's putting you in that tournament mindset. If you're newer to the sport and still trying to figure out your putt, my brother, he's only been doing this for about a year now, and he just bought a house, I got him a basket, and I was teaching him some routines and stuff, and I told him that it's really important that he, just take a stack of putters, go out there, and just get his reps in, so he gets that muscle memory of what a putt feels like. But I also told him to play games, and I think games is honestly the thing that got me best at disc golf. So what I like to do personally, it's a little bit more complicated than Pat's game. Pat's is like a really simple, clean, excellent way to do it. The way I do it is I set up 5 discs at 5 feet apart. When I first started the game, my first one would be at 10, 15, 20. Now I usually start 20, 25, 30, etc. And I have 3 putters in my hand. It's sort of a point system, kind of like putts.
That's putts. There you go.
I want to call you putts from now on.
Yeah.
I won't, but I want to. So the way I do it is your first putter is worth 2 points. Your next 2 putters are each worth 1 point. Basically, if you make none of your putts, you reset, you go back to the beginning. If you only make 1 point, you move forward closer to the basket 1 station. 2 points, you stay at your spot. 3 points, you move on to the next spot. 4 points, you move on to the next spot, and you have what I call an extra life. So if you miss all of your putts or only make 1 point from that station, you don't have to, move forward. You get 1 extra life. And I called this game Go Home because during the early parts of the pandemic, I used to go out to the basket over there, and I would do 2 hours of putting practice, and then I'd do this game at the end, and I told myself I can't go home until I win. And that's how I would give myself that pressure, which for me helped me a lot, in preparing for a tournament, because now I obviously still feel nerves if I'm stepping up to a 27-footer towards the end of a tournament, and I got one of these clowns chasing me down, or I'm trying to chase down one of these clowns. But having played this game so much, I'm more used to feeling that pressure. And if anybody wants after this, I have several games that I like to play. If I get your email address, I'd be more than happy to send you all of them.
And then last thing to go off of that before I would like to break off and everybody just work on something putting, whether that's your grip or close, circle 1, straddle versus stagger. Me and Pauli, Jason will be coming around and just helping you guys with whatever you like. I want to hear what you want to work on, what things you're trying to accomplish, and then me and him will give you as many pointers as we can for you. But the last thing is while you practice putting, I would just try and find the fun in it, because it's just a game, and that's what we do for fun. For me, it's almost yoga. For me at this point, it relaxes my mind, and I just get to get my reps in outside, and it kind of puts me in a state that I'm just very calm. But make games out of it, try and have fun, because if you're not having fun, you probably should be doing a different hobby or something else, So, yeah, that's all the talking I have. Anything you want to?
No, same here.
Okay.
Same here.
So I say we start doing some putting here. We'll be walking around saying hi and helping you with whatever you like. All right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
That's fine. There, I kind of just see if I can get it. Feels good in my hand, and then I've kind of stepped toward it, and I found even though maybe a lot of people don't move, I feel like I like to step toward it.
Yeah, because you're still keeping the core tenet of it, which is you're starting with your weight on your back foot and you're sending it towards your front foot. I mean, the key is like as long as you are, you know, when you do that step through, that you're, you know, landing behind your behind your mark.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a perfectly legal move to do.
Yeah.
And that is a good way to get momentum, because I can see here that's all on the left foot, and then you move it over to the right.
And a lot of times, the other thing I find, which I just did there, where I came up short, is I don't give it enough authority. I don't commit to the shot.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So, you know, I'm saying I'm going to look at that now and I'm going to commit.
yeah. Honestly, baskets can smell fear.
Yeah.
The putting is genuinely, I think, mostly confidence. If you believe you're going to make the putt, you're probably going to make the putt.
Missed that again. And I missed that again. So see,
Well, you can see there a little bit. You ended up kind of coming out to the right on that putt.
oh, okay.
The strange thing about it, at least that I've felt, is like sometimes, like that feels pretty straight to me. But looking at it, I did pull it to the right. So sometimes it's genuinely like center is a bit more left than you think it is.
Oh, okay.
Because like, you know, if you were to hold your arm out like this,
Yeah.
and then cock it over to the center here, it feels like you're reaching too far left, but this is actually right in line with the center pole.
I got you.
Yeah, sometimes I like to imagine like I point the center of my chest right at the center of the basket. I kind of imagine there's like a big like bar or a beam of light or whatever. And all I want to do is just keep the disc on that beam.
Beautiful.
And if you keep it on that beam, it'll stay pretty well centered.
Hi, Ray.
Ah, I don't know what happened there, but 2 out of 3 is
Not bad. So one thing I'll say when you're doing your practice putting, especially like just to help build some of the habits, you'll come down, you'll come up, and like over exaggerate
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Leave it until it's come to rest in the basket.
Shake hands with the pole.
Precisely.
Okay.
Because if you keep it up like that, I've noticed like the ones of yours that are coming in, you're starting to get them more online. But you know, generally when I'm working with someone, especially when I was like working with my brother on this stuff, I told him that I want to correct his miss. I want his miss to be hitting the cage or hitting the band. Because essentially, you know, there are kind of two planes you could miss on. You can miss it left to right and you can miss it up or down. If you keep it within your shoulders, you keep it on that center line, you're generally only going to miss it high or low, and that's a much better spot to be in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's try something here. I think I'm doing everything else pretty decent, but
Make sure that I'm putting down to win is I putt harder. Because the softer I putt, the more nervous I get, the more it's susceptible to the wind. It's going to get carried whichever way.
I know right now, I'm normally supposed to. Yeah, it is. Except I'm not doing that right now.
all right. So, are you trying to do a spin putt, a push putt, kind of a sploosh? Yeah, I arm and then snap it. Hybrid with a snap at the end. If you're working on that sploosh putt, from what I saw, your releases are all over the place. Like you said, your first one was way up to the right, and your second, it was low. Your first one was real low, then you released it way up here to adjust, and then you released it here. So somewhere you're losing your consistency of where you're releasing. Okay. All your discs were on the pole, except when you released up here. So getting that consistent where you're letting your disc go, because you come down real low, you want to make sure you're releasing in the same spot every time.
Try to go find where that spot is that
Yeah.
it makes the putt. Now, does that spot change if I'm back further or if I'm uphill, downhill?
So I like to go a little bit shorter. If it's shorter, to get more of that push putt, less to move. Because if you're moving, the more you move, the more factors you have to mess up on.
Okay.
So when I get closer, I don't want to move as much.
Okay. So just take some of the moving features out of it, make it more simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep it simple. All right, let's try it again.
One of the big guys on the tour, Dean Coleman. But yeah, there are some guys on the tour who really like
See, I think the hill is kind of
The hill's definitely tough to putt on.
So, yeah.
Do you change your release point at all if you're on this hill?
If If I'm on a hill, all I adjust is where I'm aiming. I aim higher.
Aim higher.
Yeah.
So I should just release a smidge higher then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you putt with it, and that's the numbers, 2, 4.5, and 0.
I'll let go a little soon.
And what I also do is I don't think release higher. I think a little bit more. Instead of going a little bit more, of course I do a stagger. I think a little bit more straight up instead of forward. And what that allows me to do is it lets my weight push that disc up in the air.
Toss it higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I keep my release more the same. So either way you want to think about it.
So I just need to push a little more,
Yeah.
and I'll stand a little higher.
Could be one way to do it.
I'm aiming about 2 inches up and over, like to the second to last.
Chain.
Yeah.
I would aim at that middle chain. Don't go so far to the right.
Okay.
Because even though you're that far out, I feel like you're still forcing your arm out that far. You don't need to go quite as far as you think.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. The only reason you need to aim out that far is if you literally want your putter to be coming in.
Around a
And
tree
like,
or something.
If you want it to fade in, I would aim that far so it gives it width and time to come in. But at this distance, you can get it even on hyzer pretty much straight.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
agree.
that middle chain on the right is probably a good aiming point.
Okay.
Yep.
So that release point, I think that's just where I fail in consistency on
Yeah.
it.
And every time we point it out, it seems to click.
Yeah.
3 for 3. Pretty good.
See your warm-up routine.
Oh yeah, do the whole business.
I felt my body do this that time.
No problem.